Yes, Super Bowl Sunday. Welcome into the early edge Super Bowl 58 kickoff show with our odds powered by BetMGM. I'm Erik Kuselias, and this is just the Super Bowl Mecca place to be if you're going to wager on the game, as we are now just under 2 hours away from kickoff. And, this is a special day. I once had a chance to sit with Steve Young talking, and I said, what do you remember about the day you played the Super Bowl? And he said, I remember that when I woke up that morning, I realized that when I went to bed that night, my life would be different no matter what. Whether I played well or poorly, whether we won or lost, I was going to be different when I went to bed that night. That's what it is for Brock Purdy. That's what it is for Christian McCaffrey. No matter what happens, you will be different. You will be changed today. And if you stick with us, you will be enriched. So let's take a look at where we are, how we're doing it, and where we're going. You know that this has been an under a field goal, not quite a pick-em, 49er favored Super Bowl with a total somewhere in that neighborhood of 47 and a half, minus $1.10 on 2 and 47 right now. And if you just want to play it straight up money line, it's minus $1.30 with San Francisco. You get plus $1.10 if you want to take the Chiefs to repeat. All right, let's get all the stars of the show in. How about RJ White showing up, ready to go? Mike McClure, my DFS multimillionaire, and wearing the hat. That's right. He's ready, Larry Hartstein. Let me start here, and I'll start with you first. Let's get your feet wet here, RJ. What is the one big piece of advice RJ White has for everybody who wants to bet on a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I would say don't go heavy on parlays. Don't go heavy on index props. I know people are going to be eyeing that big plus money and trying to hit something big. It should not be the centerpiece of your betting portfolio. They're fun. Mikey has a great parlay coming up here in a little bit that you'll want to check out, but make it a sliver of your portfolio. Instead, focus on the straight two-way bets. Player prop over unders, for example, things that have a yes or no. That's going to be where you make your money. And then if you want to have a little fun, sprinkle some stuff on index props, a prop with many possible outcomes like first touchdown and things like that. Do a little bit of sprinkle, but don't make things like that in the parlay the core of your betting portfolio.
All right, so index bets, parlays, consider them like dessert. They're fun. You have them at the end. It shouldn't be the main part of the meal. I got it. Larry Hartstein.
Yeah, my tip is going to be to watch that halftime total and watch what you can get in the second half. We know about Steve Spagnuolo's adjustments, which are legendary. The Chiefs are 18-2 under in the second half. The offense has only been putting up a little over a touchdown second half. The defense allowing less than a touchdown. So if you get something in the neighborhood of 23-24 in the second half, I'll definitely be looking at that under.
Yeah, look at last year. I mean, who looked more dead than the Chiefs at halftime last year? They're already clearing the parade route in Philly at halftime last year, and they're still waiting for Green to come down that stadium because Patrick Mahomes, Steve Spagnuolo, great point there, Larry. Michael.
Yeah, I would echo what these two gentlemen have said already, specifically on you don't have to bet a ton of parlays. I know they're a lot of fun, and I know I'm going to share one with you here in a little bit. The biggest interest for me personally betting in the Super Bowl is simply looking at live betting options. I talk about them a lot. You and I, EK, we've done a lot over on CBS Sports HQ every week throughout the season. There's just so many options in game here, though. You're going to be able to bet almost every single player's live over-under on rushing, receiving, passing yards, things like that. So if you've understood teams like Kansas City in certain things that change based on game script. So if there's any sort of scenario where Kansas City falls behind in this game and isn't having a ton of success moving the ball on the ground, you're still going to see guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Noah Gray, Sky Moore, all with reception numbers looking for essentially one catch. So start to look at those things, start to think about who's getting the ball to start the second half, things like that. Based on how the game's going, there's so many opportunities. Not every week are we going to get a live receiving line on Noah Gray at every point during the game. You will today. So pay attention to that kind of stuff. There are a lot of very, very easy opportunities to pick up if you are right, based off of some of the early analysis that you make based on what you've seen.
All right. And gratuitous plug based on that. I will be on HQ at the end of the first quarter telling you how to bet the second quarter. And I will be on at halftime telling you how to live bet the second half. Appreciate the lead in there. For me, it's don't just think about how to bet on things. Think about how to bet against things too. right? Betting is not betting on. It is very much and should first and foremost be betting against. The public likes overs. And I've heard people this week talk about props on shows. These are hosts and analysts that talk like you can only bet over. Well, I don't like it because I think it's not going to go over. Then bet it under. Under is a perfectly acceptable way to play these props and play this game. Don't forget about unders and betting against. All right. With that in mind, here we go. Let's go best bets for the Super Bowl. Give me two at a time. We'll go around the horn. Michael, I'll start with you. What are your two best?
All right, starting here, Kansas City +2 here. Look, I like this Kansas City team a lot. I like what they've done recently. When you get to this number in the market, you have to look at the whole body of work in terms of the whole season and what you've done lately. San Francisco gets a lot of credit for what they were able to do throughout the course of the season. Kansas City, you need to ask yourself, do you want to look at their body of work throughout the season, or do you want to look at the last few weeks when we know that everyone has been healthy? To me, Kansas City at this point, they've done it all year, really, in some of the play calling, but they're starting to play, everyone likes cross-sport analogies, right? This, to me, looks like one of the really decent star-studded NBA teams. So you've seen Miami Heat. They don't care about anything other than a couple series each year for seeding reasons and then playing in the playoffs. LeBron and the Lakers have done it at times as well. This Kansas City team, to me, projects that way. I think they're firing on all cylinders now. By far the best defensive unit that Patrick Mahomes has ever had to work with. So to get to a line where I have Kansas City -1, you can't get there if you use the entire body of work. If you use the entire body of work for the season, you should make the number -3 to -3.5 for San Francisco. However, if you really zone in on what these teams have done recently at the time that it matters most, I have Kansas City -1 here. So I'm going to go with the better quarterback, the better defense, and the better coaching staff.
All right.
And then second play, going to give you Patrick Mahomes anytime touchdown. This number varies a lot around the markets. You can find this as high as +460. Patrick Mahomes looks to run in the biggest games. Obviously, it's an elimination game here. He's played 3 Super Bowls already. He has a rushing touchdown in one of them, which came against a San Francisco team. But I think that he's going to have enough opportunity in the red zone. They're going to try and take out Kelce. We know Isaiah Pacheco is going to get a ton of attention with what he has done. But to me, this is where Patrick Mahomes' legacy on the line, everything's on the line here. I think he runs a little more. I think this price point should be down to +275.
Well done. RJ White, give me two.
I am on the same board with Mike taking the Chiefs. I echo everything that he said. I think the Chiefs should be favored in this game. They are the proven team. They are the team with the better quarterback. They're the team with the better coaching staff. They're the team with the better defense. San Francisco was not ready for Detroit. Annihilated in the first half before Detroit fell apart a little bit in the second half. And if that happens here, Casey's going to keep the lead. They'll sit on it. They showed they could do that against Baltimore, cranking out first downs. Mahomes was efficient. Pass catchers didn't drop the ball. They've reduced their targets, splits down to the people who aren't dropping the ball. So that's key there. San Francisco getting gashed by the run, and Mahomes, I think, is going to pick apart this 49ers zone coverage. It's going to lead to a very productive offensive day for Kansas City. 11 of San Francisco's 12 wins were by double digits in the regular season. But the schedule is weaker in retrospect when you look at it. They seem like big wins at the time, but wins against Dallas, Philly, Jacksonville, teams that did not hold up when we got to playoff time. So I think that's the run defense is going to be a problem. They're not as good as they were down the stretch. We've seen that in the playoffs. Kansas City playing their best ball right now, should not be catching points. I have Chiefs +2. We've seen the spread decouple a bit at different books. You can get 1.5, you can get 2.5, depending on which side you like. So go look for the 2.5. But I'm going to take the Chiefs +2. I like taking the Chiefs up to -3.5 at +160. I like taking them up to -6.5 at +220 as well. I could see them having a pretty dominant win and winning this game by at least a touchdown. There. My second bet is going to be on Isaiah Pacheco, going over 66.5 rush yards. Gave this out all the way back on the Monday coming out of conference championship weekend. It shot up for a little bit, came back down. Now we're seeing the 66.5 number again. Like I mentioned, 49ers defense getting gashed by the run, 100+ rush yards in 5 of their last 6 after allowing that level of rush production in only 3 of their first 13 games. Pacheco is seeing a lot of volume, 15+ carries in 8 of his last 9. And if you add in his 4.6 yards per rush on the season to a 15 carry workload, gets to 69 yards. So that's just a base against any defense he's facing. And now I think he's facing a pretty poor rush defense based on what we've seen. I could see him getting the 20 carries in this game as San Francisco focuses on not letting Mahomes beat them, and it becomes a little easier to run with Pacheco. And he could even break a long run. We know he's a powerful runner that can break some tackles. So even if he doesn't get to the 15 carries, I think a long run can get us over here. So I like him at over 66.5 rush yards, minus 110. I also like sprinkling a little bit on the alt line of 100 plus rush yards at probably around plus 320 you can find.
All right, so a lot of Pacheco, a lot of Chiefs. Sir Lawrence of Jersey, give me two.
I'm on the Chiefs tight end, Noah Gray, as everyone else is. Over 11.5 receiving yards, gone over at 12 of 18 games with Patrick Mahomes as the starter. And I know Kelce's going to dominate, but Noah Gray got 5 targets in the AFC title game. He's only dropped 1 pass all season, so Mahomes trusts him. My second play is on Mahomes over 36.5 attempts. You know, it's hard to change your stripes when you've been doing something all season, and that's what Steve Wilks has done. He played zone almost exclusively, 142 snaps of man coverage all season long. Against zone, Mahomes has been much better. They give you that short pass. We'll see how much they want to press the Kansas City offense, but all season they've been playing a pretty soft zone, and I think you trust your best player. In the 49ers case, I think it's McCaffrey, and in the Chiefs case, it's Patrick Mahomes to go over 36.5 pass attempts, keep the ball in his hands with that short passing game.
All right, well, I guess that at least as far as this show is concerned, I'm on Kuselias Island. The grills are always going. You know, we got the DJ going, and we've got the 49er colors out. I like the 49ers, and I like them in the first half. You know, we've talked about adjustments. I do like the coaching staff of the Chiefs better. I do think they can make adjustments like they did last year. But like a kid who waits till Sunday night to do his homework because he's really smart and he knows he can get it done, we see that sometimes the Chiefs will start slowly on you. And I do think that the 49ers ultimately have that ability to come out and run the football and run it again and control that clock. I do think that the 49ers can take advantage of certain pockets. On my ratings, the Chief defense is slightly less. I think they're a little overrated compared to what the rest of the gang that I've talked to all week and where they think the Chief defense is. So I do think the 49ers will start fast. I do think they have the better roster. I do believe in McCaffrey early, and I don't think the 49ers are going to be trailing at halftime. I don't want to have to play against 15 in the second half. I just want to play against them in quarters 1 and 2. The second one that I love, and I've worked with all of you gentlemen enough for you to know, I don't generally take a big minus number very often. But I like Christian McCaffrey to be the leading rusher in the game, and I'll go 2-1. I project him to have 5.75 more carries than Isaiah Pacheco, almost regardless of game script. At least that many. And I see him having at least 10 more carries than anybody else not named Isaiah Pacheco. And when I look at that, I don't see how, barring injury, how Christian McCaffrey can't be the leading rusher in the game, no matter what the game script. Because what did we learn in the playoffs? When the 49ers are behind, even if they're behind a lot, they still run the ball at McCaffrey over and over and over and over and over again. So how is he not going to be the leading rusher? Give me the game script. If the 49ers are ahead, I could cash this thing by halftime. If the 49ers are behind, he's still going to be running the ball. So minus 200, I think, is an absolute gift when I never play minus props. But this will be my one exception because I do believe that there is almost no way, barring injury, he can't be the leading rusher in the game. All right, give me 2 more. All right, you got 2 down, 2 more to go. Michael, you're first.
All right, here. Let's see where we are at. Christian McCaffrey, that's where I'm headed next. I love what everybody said about Christian McCaffrey. It's very clear he's the best player on that sideline and potentially the best player on the field. If you're not talking quarterbacks, he definitely is. So I believe the biggest individual mismatch in this game, there are 2 of them, really. I think San Francisco's defensive line has a little bit of an edge over the Kansas City offensive line. That's going to help Mahomes in certain ways. Mahomes doesn't take sacks. But where I think the real distinct mismatch is Kansas City's linebacking core trying to defend and cover Christian McCaffrey in the passing game. So the way I see this one going here, I see a little bit of zone defense early from Kansas City, with an emphasis on trying to put pressure on Brock Purdy, speed him up, make him make the right decision. That will leave, there will be holes in the zone. And if he can make decisions quickly enough and perfectly, he will pick the zone apart and they will have a long sustained drive. However, I don't think Spagnuolo believes he can do it. I don't believe he can do it early. So what I see is zone coverage, not giving up the home run ball, very heavy emphasis on making that release point very early for Brock Purdy. What that means in most cases, and definitely in this case with this team, that's dumping the ball off to Christian McCaffrey. When you get this guy in space, he's extremely difficult to bring down. I think this number is very, very soft. I actually have it all the way up to 49 yards here on Christian McCaffrey, over 33.5. I think he's going to be in a neutral or trailing game script because I think Kansas City has success. So I love Christian McCaffrey here over 33.5 receiving yards.
All right. Let's go to RJ White. Give me two.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the MVP, and I'm not just going to pick one player. I'm going to pick almost every player on the field because I'm taking any non-quarterback MVP to win the MVP for half a unit at plus 205. Quarterback has been the MVP in 12 of the last 17. So you're looking about a little bit poor value on that. It's about a 2/3 right there. But the last 11 Super Bowls have featured two straight quarterback MVPs only once. I think the voters get a little bored voting for the quarterbacks unless there's a massive performance. And certainly, we could see that on the Mahomes side. But, he already has two MVPs. There might be some voter fatigue that, the voters are seeing, oh, he's going to be in these Super Bowls for a long time to come. Let's chill. Let's give it to someone else. If the defense has a big day, let's give it to one of those guys. Kelce's obviously a big name that would come up if he has a good performance. And then on the San Francisco side, Christian McCaffrey has a great shot at being MVP. If you would have picked an MVP from their first two playoff games, it would have been McCaffrey over the quarterback. So if you want to just play McCaffrey in the MVP, I'm fine with that. I like taking everybody because not just with those two players, but don't forget about the defensive players. If one team's defense defines the game here, they win more than you think when you get guys with a big pick six or make big plays in the Super Bowl. I think there's been like 10 defensive MVPs overall. So you throw all that into one, you get to plus 205. So I like taking any non-quarterback MVP plus 205 for half a unit and then fading what I don't think the voters are going to be wanting to vote for Mahomes or Purdy in this game. And so those are my official plays. I'm going to give you one sprinkle on a long shot here. Marquez Valdez-Scantling to record the longest reception of the game at plus 850. He's had the Chiefs' longest reception in each of the last two games, and he's had 3 catches of 30-plus yards in that stretch. He's become old reliable down the field for Patrick Mahomes, and I think the Chiefs are going to focus on taking the deep ball away from the 49ers. I don't think that Kyle Shanahan's going to put Purdy too much at risk throwing the ball downfield. They're going to try to, move the ball consistently with McCaffrey in the short game. So I think MVS should be near the top of the favorites for me in this prop instead of 6th, because this is specifically his game, catching long receptions. So I'd put a little sprinkle on him, long reception of the game at plus 850.
Love a little sprinkle. Oh, we do a little sprinkle right there. A little sprinkle. A little fairy dust from RJ White on that one. Smart. Larry, give me two.
I'm sitting here a little stunned because I've worked with Mike for a long time, and I don't know if I've ever heard his projection be 16 yards higher than the actual number. So I had to pause and place my bet on CMC receiving yards. But now I will tell you that I'm on Brock Purdy over rushing yards. I know he's not going to have designed runs. That's not really part of the game plan at all, but he's run 11 times in the 2 playoff games. The Chiefs play a lot of man coverage. They blitz a lot. I think he's going to be decisive like he was against the Lions when nothing is there. Instead of trying to, buy more time and possibly take a sack, he's going to scramble and get over 10.5. I know it's gone up. I would not play it over 12.5. That would be my ceiling there. And then Deebo Samuel, 2 weeks off. This guy is totally healthy. He caught 8 of 9 targets. He forced 6 missed tackles in the NFC title game. So even if he wasn't 100%, he looked very close to 100%. Now he for sure will be 100%. And I agree with everyone who's fading Brandon Ayuk. I think it's much more of a Deebo Samuel game because he lines up all over the formation and not strictly outside. Those are my 2 for you, EK. Again, I've got 10 official plays on SportsLine. I know RJ has double digits as well. Check those out too.
Yep, that's where you go. You can see everybody's plays in one spot. Well done, gentlemen, on our best bets. And again, that's kind of the, little dip into our toe into the props. I know for me, this is definitely first and foremost a prop game, and I'm going to give you my best props coming up. I'm anxious to hear yours. But, BetMGM has all the action for every sports fan. New BetMGM customers can sign up today and get a first bet offer up to $1,500. If your first bet loses, you receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets with bonus code EDGE1500. That's right. That's EDGE1500. Nobody else getting you $1,500. We are. That's faux show. All right, let's recap what everybody wants you to do in terms of big plays. And then, I'm going to get to Mike McClure. We're going to get to Donkey Parlay. But you see right there, Michael says, Chiefs. Christian McCaffrey over the receiving yards and finds a significant edge there. Patrick Mahomes, anytime touchdown. RJ White, Chiefs. Isaiah Pacheco over the 66.5. And any non-quarterback MVP. That was funny. Like, I'm basically taking everybody to win the MVP except Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes. Larry, Noah Gray, that's on my sheet. I can tell you that right now. And it's because of Larry. I crunched that all week long, and I agree with him. Mahomes over 36.5 with the attempts. Brock Purdy, and you see Debo. I like the 49ers in the first half. And I like Christian McCaffrey to lead the game in rushing yards. A very rare minus 200 play for me. But again, mine more of a prop game here, and I'm going to get you those coming up. Now, how about a parlay? It's a parlay in the USA. I need a donkey parlay. I need Mike McClure. The floor is yours, sir.
All right, let's unveil the donkey parlay here. Keeping in mind, you can get a better number on this if you use the MGM boost. They have a 58% profit boost over there to celebrate Super Bowl 58. So here we go. I'm fading Brandon Ayuk. I know a lot of people are as well. I am taking an alternate line here, up to 89.5 receiving yards going under. Next, Travis Kelce, grabbing the lowest alt they can offer me here, 54.5 receiving yards. Love this leg of it. And then Brock Purdy, I want to fade him a little bit because I do think Christian McCaffrey is going to have a big day on the ground. So I'm going to go under 300 passing yards for Brock Purdy. Then we head to Isaiah Pacheco, 49.5 rushing yards. Give me that 50th rushing yard on an alternate line. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 15+ receiving yards. I think he gets at least one catch downfield in this game. When you look at what he has done recently, he actually ran more routes and played more snaps than Rashee Rice. They've had a lot of trouble with Hardman and some of the other guys on the team. MVS is the guy that is on the field nearly every snap because of his ability to stretch the defense. And then Christian McCaffrey, that prop I love so much. Just taking the lowest alt number here, 19.5 receiving yards. And then to the game itself, plus 8.5 on the Kansas City side, under 54.5 points combined, plus 950 here before you use any of the boosts.
All right. Well done. Now look, that's what we call it, the Donkey Parlay. Mike McClure helping you out, DFS multimillionaire. Just, you can take the credit. Just do what he says and take the credit, right? I mean, like, we're giving you the best jarred sauce in the world, right? It's like jarred sauce that's never been done. You don't need to make it from scratch. We've done it for you. You just take the credit. All right. How about a gem? I mean, a real gem. Let's get to the gem in terms of longer shots to score the first touchdown. I don't want any plus 200 here. All right? I don't need Christian McCaffrey. I need a shot. I need a long shot. I need a Hail Mary. I need a gem. I need Larry Hartstein.
How is 66-1, EK? Mecole Hardman, he only had one snap in the AFC title game, so this is a real long shot. I mean, the guy fumbles twice against Buffalo, but maybe he served his time. Maybe the fact that Kadarius Toney is inactive, Justin Ross is also inactive. But the fact is, when they played the 49ers last season, he scored 3 touchdowns, and 2 of them came on the ground because the 49ers are weak defending runs outside the tackles. And what does Mecole Hardman do? He's a blazing fast guy who can take that ball on a jet sweep or an end around, and he can go the distance. So, the first thing we have to get is a touch. But if we get the touch, I feel like this is great value at plus 6,600.
All right. I noticed looking right there that RJ White has Patrick Mahomes and I had George Kittle. I was down to Patrick Mahomes and George Kittle. Mahomes and Kittle. I'll go first and I'll leave the other one to RJ White. I would play. These are the 2 I would sprinkle on. Look, George Kittle can get into that groove touchdown-wise with Brock Purdy. I don't think Purdy and Ayuk are on sort of the same page. If I've got to go plus 1,000 or longer, why not Kittle? I mean, he is the perfect guy at that part of the field, and I think San Francisco will start fast in this game. So I like Kittle at plus 1,200. Nice little play when they collapse and all worry about McCaffrey. 85. There you go into the end zone, and I cash it 12-1. RJ White, why is it going to be Patrick Mahomes with the gem?
Well, it's funny you say that because I had George Kittle down as my pick for a little bit and had my write-up done. I think he's one of the few guys that I like the overs receiving on in this game. I think it's going to be a heavy run game. And so I was ready to talk him up, but I just could not get away from the feeling of going back to Patrick Mahomes. You remember that first Chiefs 49ers Super Bowl? He had the first touchdown in that game on a run there. And I think he could reprise that here. He's had 5 postseason touchdowns in his career. Heading into this year, he had scored 3+ touchdowns in the regular season and the playoffs combined in every single season before this year. And he has had no touchdowns this year, not in the regular season, not in the playoffs. He's due. This is the big game. He's going to be running and he's going to be willing to get that in there for himself. So I like him to get the first touchdown at 22-1.
All right. So consider that an arm-in-arm RJ White EK play of Kittle and Patrick Mahomes. We just sort of sliced that coin and each took one heads, one tails. Michael, while we're messing around at 12-1 and 22, you got a big one. Give me the big gem. I mean, this is Sapphire Gem. What do you have?
MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, plus 5,000 here, 50-1. And, you know, if you guys have watched these streams when I'm doing this, you're generally going to see me just basically looking for discrepancies across the market. This plays down to 2,600 in a few places, 3,500 in others. Plus 5,000 is a very fair price point for the receiver who played the most snaps, ran the most routes, for the guy for the team that has Patrick Mahomes slinging the football here. So we've seen him have the deep shots down the field. He does routinely get behind defenses because the target volume is low. I like MVS here. I think he's certainly one of the few people that we know is going to be on the field for Kansas City.
All right. Great job with the gems, folks. Let's get it done. Straight ahead, man, we've done a lot, right? We've given you our best plays. We've given you the donkey parlay. We've given you the gems. But as I've said, I believe this is first and foremost a prop game. I always think the Super Bowl is a prop game. And I have a couple I love on the unders. I can't wait to hear what the rest of the crew has. We will bring in even more folks to do even better bets. That's right. Best props straight ahead. That's next. I'm Erik Kuselias. Oh, baby, I love being on the early edge.
Out there are 2 colossal beings, both forces of nature in their own regard. But in here, as soon as the chute bursts open, the duality of man and beast begins to fade. This is the PBR on CBS Sports Network.
UEFA Europa League knockout stage on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
You were made for this.
The band is back together.
Oh, love having the band back. Look at this. Everybody in the pool. Look at those smiling faces. Woo, yeah. Sia Nejad, you think early edge. There he is. That's right. Oh, baby. Dave Richard. Not only do I get fantasy, I get props. Let me tell you, he made me some money this year. We're kind of melding those two. And there he is, Alex Selznick, my guy, Propstarz. So with everybody here, and I got Propstarz, we're just going to do it. We're going to go round robin, do a couple of passes through. Give me your best prop and why. Alex, floor is yours.
Brother E, good to see you. See ya, Uncle Dave. I'm fired up, guys. I love this game. Love these props. But yeah, my best props got to be Brandon Ayuk under 4.5 receptions. This is just a big ask for Ayuk, even when things are going well. Might I remind you guys, Ayuk had double-digit targets in one single game this season. Excuse me. And through the playoffs, he's had 14 targets, which he's turned into just 6 receptions for 100 yards, and 50 of those yards came on, as you guys know, a broken play that bounced off the defender's helmet. So just not in sync, not on the same page with Brock Purdy. Might I also remind you guys, this came against the Green Bay and Detroit pass defenses, both of those bottom 5 in nearly every passing metric. Now we're talking about Kansas City's vaunted pass defense. This is an elite coverage unit. Steve Spagnuolo excels in taking away the splash zone from the opposing offense. So this is a just difficult matchup for Brock Purdy. And the 49ers, their offense is play action and predicated on attacking said splash zones. This is just a very bad matchup, in my opinion, especially for the downfield passing. They're really just kind of using Ayuk in that role, not really giving him a lot of short and intermediate passes, which I really think 5 receptions is just a huge ask for him. So that's why I'm fading Brandon Ayuk under 4.5 receptions as my best bet.
All right, amen. I'm on the yards too. So both of those are ending up on my sheet. I'm under on yards on Brandon Ayuk. I've been talking about this all week on all the platforms that I've been on. When you crunch the numbers, when we're over 60 yards, it's just too high. I mean, it's like in the old school Major League, too high. What do you mean too high? Too high. It's too high. As simple as that. I mean, when I look here, if we're not going to catch balls off defenders' face masks, I'm not sure how we're going to get there. And if the 49ers are ever in a positive game script, then you're really in trouble here. But when I look at this, L'Jarius Sneed lining up against Ayuk, and when you watch and look at the reports during the week, it looks like they're going to double him in spots. It looks like basically the Chiefs have said, that guy, we snap him first. And then we'll worry about everything else in terms of the pass game. Obviously, McCaffrey with the rush game is a different animal. But that's what they're going to take away first. And I just don't see him having essentially 20 to 25% of the receiving yards in this game. Let me limbo lower on Brandon Ayuk, both catches and yards. Sia.
All right. Can I just say, by the way, like being on a show with Dave and Proppy, we used to do the prop show together, and I wasn't able to do it because of a scheduling conflict this year, but I feel like I'm back, EK. I feel like I'm back to where it all started. And speaking of, like, this is cool. We give out props, right? Well, if Brandon Ayuk is not going to have a great game, it might be because the 49ers are going to run and then run some more and then run some more on top of that with Christian McCaffrey. He's the 1A, 1B, 1C running back in this offense. I've got him over 18.5 rushing attempts. This is one of those situations where, listen, I think the 49ers are going to win. But even if they don't win, even if they're in a neutral game script and they end up losing, or a very much a trailing game script like they were against the Detroit Lions and they end up losing or catching up, it doesn't really matter. We saw in the Lions game, he had 20 carries, and the only reason he didn't have 23 is because Elijah Mitchell came in because Christian McCaffrey tweaked his neck. I think Christian McCaffrey's only path to not getting over 18.5 rush attempts is simply that he gets dinged up, the neck injury, the calf strain, something like that. But we know that if the 49ers are going to win this game, they're going to do it on the back of Christian McCaffrey. That's how it should start. That's how it should finish. Give me Christian McCaffrey over 18.5 rush attempts.
Hey, you and I on the same side in that. Again, I never give out a minus 200 prop, right? You all have worked with me. It's just a waste of time, except when you look and you go, how is it? I have Christian McCaffrey to lead the game in rushing yards at minus 200. Mm-hmm. Who else is doing it? He's going to have 6 more carries than Isaiah Pacheco and probably 16 more carries than anybody else not named Pacheco. If he doesn't get hurt, he's going to lead the game in rushing yards. Because as we've seen, doesn't matter if they're in a positive game script, neutral game script, negative game script, they still feed him. So I'm not sure how he doesn't lead the game in rushing yards. That's where I went on that one. Dave Richard.
Good to see you, EK. Great to see Sia and Alex. So psyched to be on right now. And happy Super Bowl Sunday, everybody. Playing off of that last point that you made, EK, we learned that Jerick McKinnon is going to be active for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's their other running back. They've used him on third downs almost exclusively when he's played for them. If there's a way you can bet McCaffrey versus Pacheco, who's going to get more carries, who's going to get more yards, one of those type of prop bets, take McCaffrey, do it now, because you're going to see McKinnon eat into Pacheco's workload. But my best bet is under on Patrick Mahomes passing yards at 262, and I've seen it blossom to 264. I think the general public just loves to take overs on Mahomes and Kelce, and these are inflated numbers. Mahomes has been under this in 4 of his past 5 games. And the 49ers haven't allowed this many passing yards in 5 of their past 6 games. And when I dig into the data, the 49ers, they're awesome against passes that are thrown 15-plus yards downfield. They're awesome against those shorter throws inside of 15 air yards downfield. And Mahomes hasn't been nearly as aggressive with the football as he's been in the past. And I think that we see the Chiefs kind of take a page out of the 49ers playbook, and they try running the football. And I think Mahomes even gets involved in that. He'll run a little bit too. And so I think the yardage is not going to be what you think it might be for Patrick Mahomes. We're taking under 262.5 yards. and you don't have to lay a lot of juice with it.
Makes a lot of sense. There he is. All right, second time through. Give me another one. We'll mix up the order a little bit. Sia, you're first.
All right. Well, I mentioned a rushing prop on the front end. I'm going to mention a rushing prop on the back end. No, it's not going to be Isaiah Pacheco. It's going to be Deebo Samuel. Now, I like him under 16.5 rushing yards. This is one of those situations where I think in a typical game, a typical setup, you're going to want to line Deebo in the backfield, and you're going to want to mix it up with Deebo and Christian McCaffrey back there. But my thought is here. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to get a lot of the carries. And part of the reason I think that is because Deebo is coming off that injury 3-4 weeks ago. I just don't see a scenario as valuable as he is and as big as he's going to be in the short area. And I do think he's going to be large in the short area and in the medium area and down the field. I don't see him running between the tackles and potentially aggravating a shoulder injury, certainly not in the first half or the first few quarters. I see him maybe getting 1 or 2 carries. And frankly, the market thinks he's going to get 3 carries. But one of those carries, let's not forget, it's Deebo, right? Yeah, he could run up the middle. We could see some sort of end around, some sort of trick play where he could actually lose yardage. So instead of taking the under 2.5 rush attempts, I'm going to take the under 16.5 rushing yards. I just don't think with the injury history that Deebo Samuel has had, you want to utilize him in that way. Keep him healthy, keep him on the edges. Hopefully he dodges some tackles. He got some stuff set up. And of course he can sustain some of those tackles. I just don't want to do it between the tackles.
Fair enough. Propstar, you say what for your second prop? I know that you and I are both fading Ayuk. What else do you have here?
Yeah, I think we're on the same page on this one as well, Brother E. I am fading Rashee Rice under 6.5 receptions. Going back to the well, went to this one in the AFC Championship game. We obviously saw a lot of passing volume for Patrick Mahomes. Ended up completing 30-plus passes and then ended up with 8 receptions for Rice. I just think this number is very, very big for Rice, who I've been bullish on all season long, but now he's facing the San Francisco pass defense that's absolutely elite. The other guys have talked about it. They rank top 3 in nearly every defensive passing metric. I talked about how good this Kansas City Chiefs passing defense is. This 49ers one is excellent as well. Sia pointed out, Dave pointed out how good they've been this season. As a result, I think Kansas City is going to run the football. I think we all agree on that as well. As long as they're dealing with a positive or a neutral game script, I think that ultimately will limit the amount of dropbacks that Patrick Mahomes has. I also think Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers team have studied the tape. They realize that Patrick Mahomes is just not driving the ball downfield. I think a lot of that is large in part due to not having really the personnel to challenge down the field. And as a result, he's really just focusing on the short and intermediate parts of the field. So I think the San Francisco pass defense and these defensive backs who are very physical are going to really challenge the line of scrimmage and play very physical, not allow Rashee Rice to operate in the short area like he did against Baltimore. So I think 7 receptions for him is a very big ask for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to go under on the stud rookie, under 6.5 catches.
That's where I am too. Look, when you bet unders, every once in a while, they play perfectly against you and you shake their hand, you say congratulations. And then when they don't alter the line the next week after this unusual game script, you hammer it twice as much and you do fine. They had 30 completions last time out. They had 39 attempts, and the completion percentage to Rashee Rice was 89%, and he barely got over. I'm going to bet against that happening again. It's as simple as that. He had 9 targets, caught 8 of them on a 30 completion, 39 attempt game. None of that's happening again, and they didn't move it down because he went over. So we're going to go under the 6.5. All right, Dave Richard, last one.
I've got a 2-1 for you, EK, and it's going to involve the way that I expect the Kansas City Chiefs to play defense against the San Francisco 49ers. There's one that I really like, and that's Christian McCaffrey going over his receiving total. That's 33.5 yards. When the Chiefs play zone, when any team plays zone, McCaffrey's target per route run rate spikes. And whenever Brock Purdy is pressured, his target per route run rate spikes. And so what do we know about Steve Spagnuolo? Master at getting pressure on the quarterback. I think you're going to see Brock Purdy see a lot of pressure. I don't think he's going to freak out. He's dealt with pressure all year. But when the Chiefs play that zone coverage, trying to take away the splash plays, you heard us talk about that earlier, that means a lot of throws are going to go McCaffrey's way. So I like the over in his yards, but I don't like it on Ayuk's. And the reason why I didn't really want to get into Ayuk is because we've already trashed him a little bit, but I'm going to trash him just a little bit more. His target per route run rate is under 25%. It's barely 20%. When teams play zone against the 49ers. He's their man beater, and I don't expect the Chiefs to play a lot of man coverage in the game. Furthermore, his target per route run rate slides down when Purdy is pressured. And compare his numbers, man versus zone, pressure versus non-pressure. Guys, he gets more yards per catch and yards after the catch per reception when it's in a situation that's favorable to him, that's man coverage, that's Purdy not pressured. I don't think it happens. I'm taking the under on Ayuk's yardage, and I'd play that down to 59.5, and I'd take the over on Christian McCaffrey's receiving yards. Play that sky high, at least 37.5. You're going to be able to find that lower, though.
Yeah, we are all starting to sync it up. We all seem to like McCaffrey receiving over, or McCaffrey in some ways over, and Ayuk in some ways under. All right, so those are your props. Well done. I got to go back to my man, Dave Richard. And, you know, one of the things I love about Dave, he's such a nice and likable guy that we have to put the Miami and Dallas Cowboy helmets behind him to neutralize that and make him a little unlikable, right? I mean, what are you going to put behind him? You know what I mean? Like puppies and other, sunrises. We need something to balance out the sweet. So we have the savory behind him. You give me one. Who's scoring the first touchdown of the game? Give me a little, gem plus 1,000 or higher.
Yeah, let's go with a real long shot. And this is one that Proppy and I have a showdown bet on. It's Kyle Juszczyk to find the end zone first. I think Juszczyk gets involved a little bit more for the 49ers as they play with two running backs at the same time. The Chiefs have struggled with that this year. And I know that Juszczyk isn't even in the same universe as Christian McCaffrey. But all it takes is one catch for Kyle Juszczyk to go over his receptions prop. That's going to happen in the game. But I also think they look his way when they're inside the 5. They don't do it all the time, but they're not in the Super Bowl all the time, and they're not against a Chiefs team that's going to get aggressive with trying to speed Purdy up. He can leak out of the backfield where it looks like he's going to block, be wide open for a touchdown. Let's say he gets it done first. We're talking about a big payday with Kyle Juszczyk scoring for the 49ers.
Excellent job, gentlemen. It's just been an absolute pleasure to be with you and allow me to crash your program, which I, of course, am a huge fan of and love being a part of. I'll be on halftime on HQ, showing you how to live bet the second half. I'll be on at the end of first quarter live to tell you how to bet the second quarter. But straight ahead, because we are now inside an hour to kickoff, Sia Nejad is ready to go. He will take over. He'll bring in everybody and keep this thing rolling. That's straight ahead. I'm EK. Yeah, early edge.
We give thanks to the athletes who took big risks, who beat the odds despite being oddballs because of their skin. But to change the status quo, you have to be willing. This is the month we remember. But more importantly, we dream of something bigger.
After the confetti falls, head on over to CBS Sports Network for exclusive post-game coverage.
We are only 45 minutes away from Super Bowl 58. We should have synced this up so that it was 58 minutes away. That would have been cool for me. I should have talked to Jake about that. Nonetheless, we got Mackenzie Brooks in here. I think she was just in the chat. Danny Brasco, who was just in the chat as well. We got Propstarz still here. Before we get into our best bets, I got it. Oh, Propstarz, you got something. You go.
Oh, I don't. I was just saluting you, Sia. I'm happy to be here. Mackenzie, Danny, great to see you guys. I'm fired up. Hello, Sia. Great to see you go from analyst to host. The versatility is very Christian McCaffrey-like.
Oh, I love that. Mackenzie, can I just say before we get started, and I want to get into some more best bets, ones that we haven't discussed, and Propstarz, I'm going to lead with you. But before we get there, everybody should know that's watching this that Mackenzie Brooks, otherwise known as Ken's or Kenzie, she wins everything, and it's super annoying. We did this whole SportsLine draft before the season started, and honestly, I don't even remember. I was so bad in that I actually had the 49ers to win the Super Bowl, and even if it happens, I still don't catch up to Mackenzie. So thank you for ruining my self-esteem. Really appreciate it. Danny Brasco, I love that you're here. Were you in that SportsLine draft?
No, I wish I was. Well, I guess I'm glad I'm not because I would have gotten smoked by Ken's.
Smoked. It's just not even fair. All right. Well, I just had to get that out of the way. Hopefully, maybe with my picks, maybe I can pick up some steam, get my self-esteem back to an even number here. Proppy, you've got a couple of props that we haven't talked about already on the show. You get us started.
I do see. Yeah, I've got a bevy of props I gave out just moments ago. Brandon Ayuk under 4.5 receptions. I'm also going to fade his receiving yards as well. Double dipping with Ayuk under 63.5 receptions. If you missed the previous segment, this is just a really difficult matchup for Brandon Ayuk, specifically against this vaunted Chiefs pass defense. Steve Spagnuolo does an excellent job taking away the splash zone, which happens to be where Brandon Ayuk does the majority of his damage. So this is specifically a tough matchup. Steve Spagnuolo defense keeps everything in front of them. Brandon Ayuk has just been operating primarily as a deep threat. He has not been on the same page with Brock Purdy throughout the postseason. 14 targets that he has turned into just 6 receptions for 100 yards. And those 2 games came against the Packers and the Lions, both dismal pass defenses. Now we're facing a Chiefs defense that's top 3 in literally every single defensive passing metric, whether it be EPA allowed per dropback, defensive success percentage, explosive downfield passing, coverage grade, et cetera, So just a really difficult matchup for Brandon Ayuk, who's struggling right now, and Brock Purdy is going to struggle to find him down the field, in my opinion. So I really like fading him a variety of ways, under 4.5 receptions, under 63.5 receiving yards. Then I'm going to fade Brock Purdy as well. Obviously a correlated play here. I just think this is a really tough spot against this Kansas City defense. I also think San Francisco, in a positive or neutral game script, is going to be run heavy. We've seen that be the case. That's how teams are opting to play against this Chiefs defense as well. That's vulnerable against the run, significantly worse against the run than they are against the pass. We also know that San Francisco loves to run the football. Also, if we just take a look at these other prop lines, or all the prop lines really, it kind of really paints a picture of how this game script is expected to go. Purdy, his passing line set at 31.5 attempts. Just not going to be a lot of dropbacks, and most likely, the majority of game outcomes here. So going to fade Brock Purdy under 247.5 passing yards. I also like his passing plus rushing number as well. You get a little extra 20-yard cushion there. So I would check that out as well. Then I'm also going to go to Isaiah Pacheco over 65.5 rushing yards. I know Jerick McKinnon is going to be active today. I am not concerned. The path of least resistance when looking at the San Francisco defense, similar to the Chiefs, is beating them on the ground. We've seen that happen throughout the postseason. The Lions had a lot of success rushing against them. Aaron Jones in Green Bay as well. This San Francisco run defense is not the vaunted rush defense that they've been historically. They're really struggling. 25th in EPA allowed per rush. So teams are opting to really run the ball heavily against them in positive or neutral game environments, which we anticipate this being, considering it's essentially a pick 'em or a very close line here. Yeah, so I think Isaiah Pacheco is going to get plenty of work. I'm not concerned that Jerick McKinnon is going to be active. I really think he's going to just steal some third down work from Pacheco and maybe some obvious passing down situations. So I anticipate Pacheco continuing to be the engine of this Chiefs offense. He's had at least 24 rushing attempts in 2 of the 3 Kansas City playoff games already. Andy Reid is leaning heavily on his stud sophomore running back. So those are 3 props I like quite a bit. I also like the Chiefs to win outright. We can touch on that in a little bit. I also want to give out, I like the Chiefs to go under 2.5 sacks in this game. Brock Purdy gets rid of the football very quickly. He's only been sacked 3 times, 4 times all year, including the playoffs. Never been sacked more than 4 times in a game in his career. This offensive line really does a great job protecting him. And then Kansas City's pass rush is just not really generating a lot of pressure. They're kind of a mediocre pass rush. So I think that's a good game prop there as well. So those are all the plays I'm on, guys.
You know, I think you were just talking for a while there. Did you drop any furthermores? I don't think I heard a single furthermore.
Not a single. Dave stole the thunder by giving it out, so I had to let that be his for the day.
I got to be honest. I thought that was a little rude from Dave Richard, just completely stealing your furthermore without giving you credit. All right. But speaking of rude, Proppy, I'm going to be a little rude here because my favorite, I gave out a prop just a few minutes ago, but one of my favorite plays also is the 49ers money line. And I feel like I'm pretty much in the minority here, although I think somebody else on this show may agree with me. Listen, this is scary. I don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes, but I'm getting the 49ers money line at -120. And here's a couple of things. I think this defense is actually going to look pretty good. I think this front four is going to look a lot better than they did the last couple of weeks. First of all, I've always thought the San Francisco 49ers defense was a little bit overrated as we were going through the season, but I've been on this team. They were my preseason ticket, as I mentioned before. And I just think, especially forget about the front four, that linebacker level, like this is a linebacker level with Dre Greenlaw, with Fred Warner that can really not shut down Travis Kelce, but really limit Travis Kelce. And when we look at the lack of targets that the Kansas City Chiefs have, it's basically Rice and it's Travis Kelce. And if you can neutralize both of those guys in what appears to be from the Kansas City Chiefs, they're doing the game manager thing, right? They're just, the passing game is basically an extension of the running game. They're not throwing it downfield. I think this San Francisco defense is going to do enough to limit them to Harrison Butker field goals. And on the other side of the ball, I just think there's too much talent on this team for a good Kansas City to completely shut them down. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. I think that's enough. I think we're going to see a relatively low-scoring game, and I say that relative to the actual total of 47.5. And I think we're going to see the winner have the spring plays, like the plays that like Deebo Samuel makes, Christian McCaffrey makes, because they're just making so many people miss. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs have as much of a capability to do that as the San Francisco 49ers. And because I also think this 49ers defense is going to step up, that is why I'm taking the San Francisco 49ers. All right, so that is my pick. And Danny Brasco, good news for me, you get to go after me. And it looks to me like you kind of agree with what I just said. Perhaps elaborate. Maybe my explanation was trash. Maybe you just want to give a much better analysis, but talk to us about your two picks.
Nothing that Sia Nejad does is trash.
Oh.
Sia, it's me and you against the world, brother. Bang, bang, Niner gang. And I absolutely agree with so many of the points you made, but you're going to hear, and you have heard all day long, all of my brilliant colleague analysts give out the X and O angles, right? Let me just focus on the market itself. Well, sports betting principles 101. In the NFL, you fade public underdogs. And it seems like everyone in the observable universe is betting on the Chiefs in this game. Don't forget, many of you analysts, I want you to go back and watch the tape. Were you selling on this Chiefs team about 2 months ago? Did you say they didn't have it anymore and there were no playmakers? And now they're the league's darlings all of a sudden? Look, I get it. Mahomes, the greatness, right? You can't deny it. Kelce. They just have this magic about them, and their defense is elite. It's the best unit on defense that Mahomes has ever had behind him. But to me, I'm fading the market here. The going theory right now in my circle is that there was a tremendous amount of liability on the sports books for the 49ers futures tickets. And that's why they maybe made the Chiefs underdogs. I'm scratching my head saying Mahomes, Kelce, the two most popular players in the league in the Super Bowl with all the momentum, and they're underdogs. Doesn't it feel suspicious and a bit trappy? I think they attracted the amount of tickets so that the sports books have dual-sided action, which is the ultimate goal of them to profit. And the ideal scenario, even with these whale wagers coming in, $1 million ticket on the Niners, $500K bet on the Niners, we're still seeing lopsided action towards the Chiefs side. I think the ideal scenario for books is that the Niners win and cash as favorites, even with the big money bettors. So market to me says it's a pros versus Joes game. And that's crazy to say because Mike McClure, RJ White, freaking Billy Walters is on the Chiefs. So we're going against some scary bettors here, Sia, but it's bang, bang, Niner gang. I believe in them to do it.
I love it. I love your analysis. And by the way, I do agree with you because the line's been curious for the 2 weeks. And there were so many more futures tickets on the San Francisco 49ers. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding, I mean, you talked about a couple of big names that are on the Kansas City Chiefs, but it looks to me like some of the huge bets on this Super Bowl from a side standpoint are on the San Francisco 49ers. So, take that for what it's worth. By the way, in the chat, there's a lot of questions. I want Kenzie to give out her picks, and then we're going to address some of the questions in the chat. And if you have any questions and you haven't been in the chat yet, go ahead and put the questions in there and we'll try to get them. We have a little bit of time. We're going to get to the goose. We're going to get to our first touchdown scores, but we're also going to get to your questions, but only if you guys and girls actually hit the like button. Can you hit the like button for us? Would really appreciate that. All right, Kenzie. You kind of have for those of you that don't know, Kenzie, like I basically just put her on, and everybody knows you at this point. They watch Inside the Lines. I know you're on Early Edge. You're hitting first touchdown scores all the time, but I kind of put you on a platform just like 15 minutes ago. So I feel like I cast some unneeded and unnecessary pressure upon you. So with that pressure, maybe I'm just trying to cut you down at this point, but with that pressure, what are some picks for the Super Bowl, Kenzie?
Look, I have a lot of picks here, but I wanted to give out some creative ones. I do like Brandon Ayuk under 4.5 receptions. That is a prop I like. Obviously, Proppy talked about it a lot, talking about in the earlier segment. I won't waste your guys' time and talk too much more about that, but I'm on the fading Ayuk train. I also like his longest reception to be under 24.5 yards as well. I think RJ was on that as the site. But as far as the other plays, okay, this isn't going to be pretty, guys. This is not going to be pretty plays. We're going Juwan Jennings over 13.5 receiving yards here. The model has him projected for 21 yards. I think people were scared when he only had one reception for 8 yards last week, but that was a crucial drive. To me, that just showed the trust they still have in him with Debo on the field, with Ayuk on the field. We've talked about this KC secondary, how powerful they are. I think all of their focus will be on Debo and Ayuk. It might just be 1 or 2 receptions here for Jennings that could get this done. I also do like him over 1.5 receptions at plus money. If you're feeling really confident, that might even be better value. But as far as the yards, I like the shot of it potentially being done on 1 reception. But I think in the Super Bowl, we see some new characters start to come out, right? These teams have had weeks to prepare for each other. We'd be surprised to see Juwan Jennings. So would they. And another ugly play that I actually really like might be one of my favorites, Elijah Mitchell to go over 3.5 rushing yards. Few ways this could work out here. Either A, CMC is having a great game. He's having a successful game. He has a really long run. He might have a 70-yard drive and need a break, okay? He might hit the sideline for a few minutes. He does that sometimes. That's when Elijah Mitchell comes into play here. Or maybe he gets banged up. Maybe he has to go over to the sideline for a little bit, get evaluated. Again, Elijah Mitchell comes in here. He averages 3.7 yards per carry. So all we really need here is 1 drive from Mitchell. I think we can get it. We've had it before. He had 7 yards last week on 4 carries. So this is not impossible. I think this is a sneaky play that could work out for us here.
So I love those, by the way. Elijah Mitchell's super interesting. I mean, honestly, I think I'm comfortable playing that with my Christian McCaffrey prop because it almost works as a hedge a little bit. Like if Christian McCaffrey, and what the prop I'm talking about, by the way, is the rush attempts, but it works as a hedge, and we know both of them can absolutely come in. So I think the Elijah Mitchell one is really, let me ask you this. I know this is like almost like a silly question because it's such a low rush yard total, but I do think some books have it, and maybe you did this, by the way. I think some books have this up to 4.5 rushing yards, which again, it's like hilarious that I just presented that scenario, but it's true. Would you also take it at 4.5?
See, I have heard that, and people have asked me that this week on Twitter. I think I like the 3.5 because he averages 3.7 yards per carry. I think when we start to hit that 4.5 number, it makes me a little more scared because I don't know if that's something he will be getting done on 1 carry. Don't hate it. I love these sweat out these props like this. You're really hoping for one thing in the game to happen. I still think it's a fun prop. The model technically has him to have, I believe, 3.9 carries. So if that is the case, obviously that would go over. We just kind of have to account for the fact that there's potential that Christian McCaffrey can't get through the entire 4 quarters.
Yeah. And by the way, you don't have to make all of these bets, right? I don't think there's anybody in the chat that's made every single bet we put out. So if you really wish you had it at 3.5 and it's at 4.5, then lay off. And by the way, there's going to be a lot of live betting opportunities. One that I'm going to speak to as we get through these questions, and it involves Brock Purdy. Proppy, I'm going to get to a lot of the chat questions. We're just going to kind of go around the horn, get people's opinions here. But there was somebody, and forgive me because I didn't catch the name, somebody who remembers, he thinks it was last year, but it was actually 2 years ago, I believe, where you hit the exact score. And we were doing our Super Bowl show through the Super Bowl that year. And so you actually hit the exact score and you won a lot of money on it. You were so shocked by your own genius that you actually had to exit the show for a few minutes and like gather yourself and come back to the show. It was an amazing moment. With that said, of course, if you've done it before, people think you can do it again. Do you have an exact score to give to your people?
See, I might be one of those people that have been struck by lightning numerous times here. So, of course, I have an exact score, and it's 170-1, and it's going to be the Chiefs 27, San Francisco 20. So, yeah, that is my exact score. It pays 170-1. For those of you who like betting this market, I do. I like to take at least a handful of score predictions. Some of them even involve San Francisco winning, even though I do ultimately like the Chiefs. And just mess around. You can get, obviously, usually the odds start at 100-1, so very favorable payout. And as far as just very simplistic advice for you, I essentially just look at the total, and then I just play around with what seems like some likely outcomes that are within range, a couple of points of the total, and there you have it. It's not rocket science. It's a ton of fun, and we hit the Rams 23, Bengals 20, which paid 100-1 2 years ago.
So good. That's so good. Well, I can't not go to Danny Brasco on this in Kenzie. So, Danny, do you have an exact score?
Of course I do. I do the same thing that Proppy does. I play with the total, right? So it's sitting at 47.5. Let's say odds makers nailed the number, which they probably did. It's going to land on the number. Give me Niners 24-23 and a tight victory.
Ooh, that's close to my final score, by the way, which is 24-20 Niners. Kenzie, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'll speak for the model here, which is, my job. I'm like the Lorax, speak for the computer coders here. The model's projected score is 23-22 Niners, so actually pretty in line with you guys here. We talked about that's a little bit to the under here. We talked a lot about Bill Vinovich earlier this week. Major unders ref here. Large, heavy stats to the under. So take that for what you will, whatever it's worth, coincidence or not. I think that can play into this as well.
Okay, so 23-22, by the way. The cool thing about that is, Proppy just said they start at 100-1, these odds. Like, that one's going to be like 250, 300, 350-1 because you got that 22. 23 is somewhat unusual-ish, but the 22 is extremely. So, I mean, I'm probably going to bet that. Just for Proppy, go ahead.
I can't remember if it was Matt Gay who was kicking at the time for the Rams, but there was a missed extra point, which ultimately led to my 23-20 victory in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So that missed extra point was very favorable.
And by the way, drop your final score in the chat. Says SportsLine and says Sia Nejad, the counselor of cash. All of your scores kind of indicated that we're going to see some field goals in this game. And I think that's important because there was somebody asking about squares, because now at sports books, you can buy squares. You don't have to wait to see where the chips fell. And to be honest with you, I didn't buy any squares, but I think looking at field goal finishes in terms of those scores, like the 3s and the 6s, and maybe the 3 could hit at a 3 or a 23 or whatever they get, 13. I think those are interesting things to look at when you're buying squares. And for the record, Harrison Butker over 7.5 kicking points. That's not a play I actually made, but it's a play I kind of like. Don't forget, Moody hasn't been great. Butker's been amazing. You might want to play him in your showdown lineups, but these are really pristine conditions, right? We're in a dome. We've got a really good kicker. We got an average kicker for San Francisco, but field goals really could play a big part of this game. So it's something to keep in mind. All right, let's go to the next chat question, because we had Brock Purdy. Somebody asked about his rushing yards of 12.5. I think this opened at 11.5, or at least last week it was 11.5. Now it's 12.5. Kenzie, I'm gonna start with you. What do you like on this one?
Well, it's interesting because early last week on HQ, I went on and talked about a few player props that I saw certainly were going to start catching steam the closer we got to the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy rushing yards was one of those act nows that I said you could get it at 9.5, 10.5 early last week. So a lot has changed since then. We have him right around 12 yards. So at 10.5, I actually really liked it, but I think that number's long gone now. But interesting because he was one of those characters we talked about that were going to catch some major steam here.
Yeah. So do you like it at 12.5, or is it a stay away?
I think it's a stay away. I think 10, if the line was still 10.5, I consider it, but at 12.5, it's not worth it to me anymore.
And Danny, I want to ask your opinion on this, but I do want to suggest that from a live betting standpoint, if the Kansas City Chiefs go up big, listen, anything's possible in this game. If they go up, let's say double digits, I think we're looking at to me, what I would do is I'd be hammering the over in Brock Purdy's rushing yards, because he's going to drop back constantly down multiple scores starting in the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. And what do those dropbacks produce? They probably produce a lot of passes, a lot of throws, but also just a lot of desperation rushing yards from the quarterback, a quarterback that's very unlikely to slide, very likely to dive forward to get those extra yards, again, being down in the Super Bowl. So if we find a double-digit lead for the Kansas City Chiefs, if I can, I'll tweet it out for everybody if it's like a commercial break and it's conducive to do it. But I really think, and that if he doesn't have any rushing yards at that point, that might even move down to like 10.5. And I would be hammering it at that point. Jay Brasco, any opinion on Brock Purdy rushing yards?
Yeah, I actually did put out the over 12.5 on SportsLine early in the week. Hopefully you got it where Ken's gave it out at 10.5. Obviously that's the better number, but yeah, his instincts are his X factor, right? That's how he led that comeback against the Lions. I think he'll be forced to use his legs. That pressure is coming. Karlaftis, Jones, they're coming around the edge. And unless they're doing quick release stuff all game, and they will go run heavy, they will go quick release and, find McCaffrey in the screen. I just think ultimately Purdy will be forced to use his leg at some point, and that could result in a 15-yard scramble right away. So I like the over still. I think in a negative game script, it's like Sia's mentioning, it's especially likely to hit. And Sia, if either team goes down by 10 or more, I'm probably going to live bet the other side. If at any point I can somehow get the other team through a full possession, say plus 7.5, I'll bet the other team both ways. You saw Mike McClure had in his donkey parlay, he had plus 8.5 for both sides. So we expect a one possession game. Look for live betting opportunities for sure.
Proppy, I want to switch gears here a little bit because, first of all, you can talk about the Brock Purdy. You can just address it, whether you like it or not, or whether it's just a stay away. But somebody was asking about Travis Kelce overs. One thing I noticed, and I sort of put this out on a couple of different shows, his receiving yards prop was 70.5. At some places it was as high as 72.5. And we've seen that come down to like 70.5 pretty much everywhere, down to 69.5 in some places. I was all over the under when it was 72.5. It just seemed like an obvious play to me. Like this stuff is getting steamed up for the superstars, particularly Travis Kelce. I think he could get a ton of receptions, but with Greenlaw and Fred Warner back there, I don't see him getting much after the catch. So even at 69.5, I prefer the under. I'm not going to bet it because I really prefer it at 72.5, and those just don't exist anymore. But any thoughts on Travis Kelce?
Yeah, I'm with you, Sia. I like the under there as well, especially when we're talking about the low 70s for Kelce. Obviously, he excels in these high leverage situations. We look at Kelce in the playoffs, he's a whole different animal. And obviously, during the regular season, one of the greatest receiving tight ends of all time, but seems to get targeted even more in the playoffs. But yeah, I just think the San Francisco defense are well equipped to mitigate a lot of his strengths. They just have extremely athletic, rangy linebackers who can run. San Francisco also tackles very well, and just pretty much for the past 10 years, they've excelled in limiting opposing tight ends. When we're talking about Travis Kelce, though, he is the premier player at the position, but I do think it is a difficult matchup. I agree the number's gotten steamed up. I'd look under. To me, it's a stay away. I think the number's efficient, but I'd lean under if anything.
Yeah, lean under for sure for me as well. All right, Brasco, there's people in the chat. Oh, go ahead first, and then I got a question for you.
Well, just speaking of Travis Kelce in general, it's wild to see reports from some sportsbooks coming out that there are more tickets on him to score and his receiving yards props than there are on the side and total in the Super Bowl, which is just how crazy the sports betting market has gotten.
Yeah, and I assume most of those totals are on his receiving yard over, which just gives you, all you need to know about, where that number should be and where it actually is. Proppy, go ahead.
See, I know in the chat, someone, I believe Rocky, is asking about Patrick Mahomes' rushing attempts at 4.5. I tend to lean over on this number for a variety of reasons. I think Mahomes runs a lot more in high leverage situations. We look at his postseason rushing splits compared to the regular season. He runs the ball more. That is the case with a lot of quarterbacks that possess mobility. We've also seen Mahomes rely on his legs more, especially as a result of the Chiefs just not being able to attack downfield like they have in years past. So Mahomes is having to be creative with generating offense because of that reason, just not having the speed on the boundaries as kind of keeping everything in that short and intermediate parts of the field. So we're seeing Mahomes run the ball more than ever, coupled with the fact that he runs in high leverage situations, which this obviously is in the Super Bowl. Then you have the potential kneel downs at the end of the game, which could account for 1 to 3 additional rushing attempts, as we know kneel downs count as rushing attempts as well. So I would lean over on the 4.5. I believe this opened at 3.5, if I'm not mistaken, and was bet up to 4.5. Obviously, really like it at 3.5. Don't think that number is available anymore. At 4.5, I'd still lean over on it, though.
Yeah, and Max Freely says, don't forget about kneeling. Those count as rush attempts, which is probably why you want to be on the rush attempts. Maybe I'd be a little afraid of the rushing yardage if you think Kansas City is going to roll in this game. Something to think about. Mackenzie, green light or red light on the rushing attempt over 4.5 for Patrick Mahomes?
I'm on the green light here. I actually had this in a parlay that we did on Inside the Lines earlier this week. And I don't know how much this could directly correlate, but as part of my Bill Vinovich deep dive last week, I also found that he is very lenient with offensive holding here. A lot of offensive holding that goes unseen here, which is great news for a guy like Jawan Taylor, who just loves himself an offensive hold. So as far as sack props, I think I would be careful with sack props because it might be a lot harder for these guys to get to the quarterbacks, considering the offensive holding that could be going on here. But maybe that could also correlate to Patrick Mahomes having more time, feeling more protected here, and getting out of the pocket as well.
Okay, Vinovich isn't going to call penalties like Kansas City's going to win. Okay, like I'm just putting that out there. This is unbelievable. Danny, let me ask you this. Speaking of quarterbacks, because there were also, and by the way, we will get to the gem. Be patient, we will get there. And for the record, we have a 4-to-1 ratio on people watching versus the like button being hit. Really prefer a 2-to-1 ratio. So let's keep hitting that like button. Let me ask you this. Brock Purdy, his over, Danny, this is for you. His over half of an interception, it's juiced pretty heavy to the over. I mean, we're talking like -135, -140. I understand that Brock Purdy can find some trouble. I mean, we've seen it recently several times. I mean, there was some games like against the Packers where he should have thrown like 3 more interceptions than he did. But with that said, would you dare pay that juice? And I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm just surprised it was, -140 in a game where, if the game script is neutral, maybe not a ton of passing, at least not down the field from Brock Purdy. Where are you at on that interception prop?
I'm certainly not someone that's going to pay juice for an interception prop, so I'm not going to bet it. But I understand where the price is, why it's there. We see him against the Packers and against the Lions as well. Across the body, over the middle of the field throws, so reckless. That's why we're looking for him to use his legs and take off, right? So Brock, if you're listening to this in your pregame warmup, which you probably are, no over the middle of the field throws, not necessary. Use your legs. I think he's more likely to fumble than he is to maybe throw an interception if that's the case. But I understand why the market is where it is on it. If you want to lay that juice, be my guest. I won't.
Proppy, any thoughts on Purdy throwing a pick?
I think Danny hit the nail on the head. I agree with his take completely.
All right, I'm going to switch it up before we get to your goose, Proppy. We're about to get to that. Kenzie, how about Mahomes throwing a pick? I mean, again, we talked about it earlier in this very show where he's not really throwing it downfield, but he's still passing a ton, and we still have a pretty good defense on the San Francisco side that, in theory at least, can get after the quarterback. Any thoughts on, I think his over half of interception, it's basically like -110, -115. Any thoughts on Mahomes throwing a pick?
Again, having any type of juice with these interception props is not something I'm in love with. I'll be so honest. I really just not touching Patrick Mahomes in this game very much. I just don't know what to even think of this, or what. It's just hard to get behind him and predict what he can do. I will say I could see a version of this story where it's maybe another long field MVS throw here that could possibly get intercepted. I do like MVS also maybe to score a touchdown as well. But if there is a storyline in my head where Patrick Mahomes is to throw an interception, I could see it being something like that. Again, not something I'm really in love with though.
Yeah, I completely hear that. Oh, you know what I'm in love with? By the way, if you have more questions, put them in the chat. Proppy, it's been a little while. Like it's been at least a few weeks where we've had, and that's partly because we haven't had football, but where you've had a goose to show off on a primetime NFL show. And this is our last chance to do it for this NFL season. So any goose to offer up to the people?
I do indeed, Sia. Yeah, Goose has been in the lab for the last week and a half, honestly, since these lines dropped. So we've got one we've been working on together. It's plus 575, starting with the chalkiest of chalk. We're talking C-Mac to get into the end zone. Listen, we know that's an inevitability. We're going to add that. So yeah, C-Mac, anytime touchdown. And then we're basically going Fade City across the board outside of 2 props. But we're going Mahomes under 305 passing yards. Brock Purdy under 275 passing yards. Going over 50 rushing yards for Isaiah Pacheco. Under 95 receiving yards for Rashee Rice. Under 90 receiving yards for Brandon Ayuk. And then last but not least, going back to the C-Mac well, over 20 receiving yards. Put it all together for a SGP prop stew. It is plus 575 on the king of all sports books, MGM. Thanks, Goose. Goose is going to cash this, our last SGP of the season.
And just let me pick up on Kenzie, go ahead. And then I want to ask you about McCaffrey receiving yards one last time, probably before we get to the gems. Kenzie, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick. That reminded me, a lot of people, like CMC to get in the end zone here. Obviously not a lot of value taking him alone, but you can get plus money parlaying him and Pacheco together, both to get into the end zone. I think that's a great little 2-leg parlay if anyone's interested in that.
Another interesting way to play McCaffrey, and Danny will get to you in a second, is his first half touchdown. So if you want to bet him for a touchdown in the first half, where for whatever reason, that's where a majority of his touchdowns have been this season, certainly in the rushing department. Yeah, it's plus 130. So again, you're taking out a half, but plus 130 for the guy who especially game script wise, it's probably not going to get out of hand early. And if it does, it doesn't matter. Christian McCaffrey's still getting the ball. So Christian McCaffrey first half touchdown. I believe at most books, it's still at plus 130. Danny Brasco, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw Katie Mox was on that one too. I like that one a lot. See, Christian McCaffrey receiving yards has been talked about a good deal. It was in a parlay I gave out, a parlay prop he just gave out. Mike McClure gave it out. I just wanted to mention that's my favorite player prop of the day. I think in no world CMC doesn't get targeted a good deal in the short pass game. He could eat up yards and go over that number. And see, after we do the gems, I believe I failed to give out one of my picks. If I can run through it, but we'll go through gems first because I know everyone wants the big plus money shots.
All right. Yeah, that's a good idea. Proppy, I did want to ask you before we get to the gems real quick. You took that receiving yards line down from, 33.5 to 19.5 in your goose. We are expecting, did you have a play? I know other people had a play on the receiving yards over. Did you have a play on the receiving yards over as well for Christian McCaffrey?
It's a rare exception. Typically, I obviously don't like running back receiving lines as they're not going to be first reads, and it's really hard to predict when their usage is going to come in the passing game. But McCaffrey being one of those exceptions because of his three-down skill set, because of his versatility, because he's such a good running back out of the backfield, I just think this matchup bodes well for him. Obviously, being the Super Bowl, you just want to get the ball in his hands in space however you can. But specifically against this Chiefs defense, as I mentioned, Steve Spagnuolo, really it's predicated on preventing downfield passing. As a result, the Chiefs really just try to keep everything in front of them. They're a very good tackling team as well. But we'll see historically this season, previous seasons, pretty much since Steve Spagnuolo has taken over defensive play calling duties in Kansas City, they are very vulnerable to receiving running backs. They give up a lot of production in that department. So I think that's going to continue to be the case today. I think McCaffrey is going to be heavily involved as a receiver. Obviously, the versatility is phenomenal, especially it's pretty much game script proof as well. Whether the 49ers are up or coming from behind, they're going to utilize him in the short area passing game. So I expect that to be the case. I expect that to be one of the focal points of San Francisco's offense today.
Interesting comment from Blessings. And I'm not trying to get on this person. I don't know his actual name, but he says, hey, I disagree with Proppy that there's no speed on the edge for Kansas City because McCole Hardman runs a 4.33 40. Well, that's true, but he's hardly on the field and he's a terrible route runner. So, we can pull a track star from the 400-meter relay if we want and put him on the field. But if he's not a good route runner, it kind of doesn't matter. So, yeah, you're right. In open space, McCole Hardman, if he gets it, he can fly down the field. The problem is actually getting it. And by the way, not fumbling it either on the 1-yard line. Probably, did you have anything to follow there?
Yeah, we can measure that. When I say speed, I'm talking about football speed, not necessarily track speed. Marquise Goodwin was an Olympian, ran like a 4.28 40. Doesn't translate to obviously being a good football receiver. If that was the case, Usain Bolt would be playing in the NFL. What I mean by speed is speed with the football, and what I mean by that is just passes that go over 15 yards, completions over 15 yards. The Chiefs have one of the fewest rates of 15-yard plus passes in the NFL this season. So that's the metric that I'm using to quantify whether or not they have the ability to attack down the field, which they just haven't had this season.
Patrick Mahomes, game manager. You heard it here first. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the gem. Let's get to our first touchdown scores. You know what's so interesting about, I'll comment on Proppy's pick and Danny Brasco's pick in a second, because I kind of have something to say about that as well. I noticed Dave Richard had Kyle Juszczyk as his first touchdown score at 40-1. This is our last chance to do it. I probably should have gone a little bit more chalky, but frankly, a lot of the chalk is shorter than plus 1,000. Kyle Juszczyk, he's part of the personality of this team. When we look at the personality of this team, it's Deebo Samuel, it's Trent Williams, it's guys like George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk. And I could see a situation. I know Bill Vinovich doesn't call penalties much, but let's just say he calls a PI and the ball is placed on the 1-yard line. I could see on first down, fullback right up the middle. If it doesn't work, second down's going to McCaffrey, third down's going to McCaffrey. Maybe fourth down's going to maybe George Kittle, for example. But I think if Kyle Juszczyk is going to make his imprint on this game, I actually think it's going to be super early. So 40-1 doesn't see, I mean, it's a long shot, don't get me wrong, because it's possible he doesn't touch the ball the whole game. But I suspect he'll get 1, 2, 3 touches. And if he does, I think it's going to be early in the running game, up the middle from the 1-yard line. All right. That is my gem. It's my last. I'm kind of choked up because I got so many gems, and this is the last time I get to give one out this year. I feel like Tom Brady-ish right now. All right, Proppy, I think we go to you next on this one. If I had a back, this is what I was going to say about Kittle. If I had a backup, somebody at shorter odds, it would be this guy. Talk to us.
Before I give my George Kittle soliloquy, I would like to mention, Sia, I believe Mackenzie, if we look at her hit rate based on the amount of appearances, she might actually be challenging you, Sia, because the show appearances are around like 10 to 15, and then 2 gems. A really impressive hit rate from Mackenzie. So tip of the hat, I believe she should be going in front of me. But I will go George Kittle here. Frankly, I'm just taking the chalk, just trying to steal another gem before the season concludes here, so I can get that third gem to look a little less more deserving compared to you, Sia. But yeah, George Kittle, obviously he performs well in these high leverage situations, whether it be prime time, whether it be playoffs, whether it be the Super Bowl. I expect him to be the security blanket, especially once Brock Purdy gets into that green zone. You know, he relies heavily on the tight end. So yeah, George Kittle, I think at this price was the chalkiest and the way to go.
All right. And by the way, I agree. The hit rate for Mackenzie Brooks is pretty insane. For me, I'm kind of holding on to like the sports talk, more like the morning sports talk show where it's like surface level stuff and we just count rings. Like that's really all I'm trying to justify here in terms of Mackenzie. Not forget about going in front of you. She should be going in front of me, at least in some circles. All right. Kenzie Brooks, are you going to be right again? It's so funny because we both have 40-1 shots. Like she's actually picking on me here because it's going to be her 40-1 shot that hits and mine that doesn't touch the ball. You have the floor, Kenzie.
Yeah, honestly, I actually want to. I have to count how many of these primetime shows I've done because I am curious what the ratio is there. Maybe it's just sometimes there's just like that feminine gut feeling that really can just pick some lucky things like this. And I'm going right back to the same thing here with Juwan Jennings. Again, someone I've been on. I like his receptions. I like his yards. I just think in the Super Bowl we'll start to see some random characters that we don't always see getting looks. I think it'll surprise the Chiefs defense just as much as it surprises the viewers. I like him 40-1 here. Again, from what I saw in that game with that strong reception, he is a trusted player with the ball on this team. That's the kind of guys you use in the Super Bowl here.
Yeah, very true. All right, Danny Brasco, we heard a little bit about George Kittle. Anything more to say? And I know you had another prop or side to give out.
Yeah, that's right. Well, for the gem, I got to get on the board here. Why not do it at the close of the season? And I love George Kittle, me and Proppy in lockstep there. Just that energy, intensity kind of player that Purdy might go to. We know about the yards after the catch. Maybe Kittle breaks a big one. See, I love your Juszczyk pick. I actually bet on him in a couple ways, over 3.5 receiving yards. I bet the anytime TD plus 900. Why not make it the first one for 40-1? And for role players on the Niners, Juwan Jennings sounds like a guy that randomly gets in the back of the end zone, right? So I like what Ken's is doing there. Speaking of what Ken's is talking about, let me give my final pick. Ken's, are we best friends? Because nobody's talking about Bill Vinovich. Nobody in my life talks to me about, there's 2 referees I want to hear that are on the call when I bet an under. And those guys' names are John Hussey and Billy Vinovich. And he's on the call for this under 47.5 in the Super Bowl that I'm going to bet here. I think we're going to all expect to see a run-heavy game that's going to eat up clock on both sides. Both of these defenses are most beatable on the ground. We've seen the Niners struggle with it. We've seen KC struggle with it too. The Ravens totally forgot who they were and only had 6 rush attempts to running backs. If they had focused on that game plan, we might have seen a different result or a much closer game. But alas, they did not. I think the Niners will not forget who they are here. Run heavy to elite defenses. It's fundamentals here, guys. Defense and run game wins championships. And also, this number has stayed firm in the market. 47.5 was its opening total and hasn't gone anywhere. You know, the public loves to bet the over. The money's on the under, and it stayed right here. To me, that says Vegas likes where they've set it. So I'll play the house. I'll ride with them. If there's an early score, look to bet a live under. If it gets above, say, 54.5, I'll probably tap it again.
Yeah, I like the under quite a bit as well. I think we're going to see, and Mike McClure and I talked about this a little bit on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. last week, where we think there's going to be limited possessions, a lot of the running game. And again, even when the Kansas City Chiefs are passing, it feels like they're running because they're completing a lot of passes and they're getting very small chunks of yardage. So I like that under quite a bit. And I like what you said about it not really getting steamed up, even though we know the public is probably going to be betting overs there.
And the holding call, yeah, I mean, Ken's brought it up. They are just brutal. Like, they will kill a drive. He will absolutely, you'll watch the live total just completely drop based on false starts and holdings from Billy V. It is remarkable, and I love it as an under better.
By the way, speaking of the under, if you don't want to take the under pre-flop, we do know that, like, the scripted plays on both sides, especially with the Kansas City Chiefs, they're pretty good. Like, I can't guarantee that there's going to score a touchdown or a field goal on the first or second drive, but it's very possible that this 47.5 ticks up to 49.5, 52.5, depending on how those first couple of drives go for each team, in which case you can bet the live under there. So instead of getting the 47.5, maybe you're getting it at whatever it goes up to, 53, because Kansas City scores a touchdown very early in the game on their opening drive. So these are some things to think about. Live betting this Super Bowl, it's more intuitive than you think. So live betting this Super Bowl makes a lot of sense, especially if you're a little nervous about playing the sides and the totals in particular. All right, I don't know that we're 4 minutes from kickoff. I mean, I think kickoff is going to be like sometime after 6:30, but it's about time we get out of here. I think we answered pretty much all the questions in the chat, which I'm super psyched about. Kenzie, go ahead.
Well, I know we have some time until kickoff. Some things we can bet on right before kickoff would be Taylor Swift national anthem appearances over under 1.5. I think they're going to show her during the national anthem. I don't think they're going to do it twice. I think they're going to do it once. I'm taking the under here, under 1.5 appearances. I think it's going to be a really long shot of her and the whole box and Donna and the whole gang. But I don't think they'll show her twice in the national anthem run. I think that'd be a little bit of overkill. And they got to balance it a little bit because not everyone's very happy with all the Taylor Swift media coverage here.
I agree with that take quite a bit.
I think to get that one off my chest.
No, yeah, Danny, like that's a really good take, right?
It's almost like it would be like the NFL knows it's been ad nauseum. Swift haters are really frustrated. Doing it during the national anthem would almost feel unpatriotic. So one long shot, no mas.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people to see there. There's a lot of people to get around in that.
Yeah,
that's true. Proppy, you're on mute.
He's muted for the Swift bet.
I'm going to be remiss if I didn't mention this. I'm going to sound like a company man here, guys. By the way, I absolutely love the take from Ken's regarding Taylor Swift here. But on another note, the coverage from CBS on the Super Bowl, in my opinion, has been absolutely phenomenal, whether it be HQ, some of the gang like Larry and Emery Hunt, on site at the Super Bowl, Zach Simony as well, setting up out front of, I forget what casino it was, Bellagio, maybe. Just Bellagio, just phenomenal coverage all week or the past 2 weeks, really. But just this week has been exceptional. So just wanted to tip the cap. Kudos to CBS. Recognize some of our colleagues that have really done tremendous work on site in Las Vegas. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure to watch.
Well, we got to put the recap screen up, and while people are taking a look at the recap screen, we got to find out. I mean, Kenzie kind of brought this to my attention when she talked about stuff before kickoff, but heads or tails, folks. Proppy, I'm starting with you.
The greatest bet of all Super Bowl when you pay juice on a 50-50 coin flip. But I'm going to go tails. How can you go anything but tails? I think tails has a nice track record historically with the Super Bowl. Usually when I flip a coin, it usually lands tails. A lot of people, when I know they do coin flip bets over and over again, I think tails primarily comes up. So, yeah, I don't know how you can do anything besides tails.
By the way, the books are changing it up. They're not making you pay minus 110 anymore. I think most of them have plus 100. So it's at least even money. I mean, it's pure and unadulterated gambling, but it's even money nonetheless. Danny Brasco, heads or tails?
Shout out to the books for taking away that predatory 5-cent juice on that. Everyone's taking tails, so you know me, Sia. I'm going the opposite direction. They say tails never fails. I came up with a new saying. Heads gets the bread. Let's start it right now, guys. Heads.
Doesn't even rhyme. Kenzie, go ahead.
Yeah, that is a stretch of the imagination there, Danny. Yeah, as the big computer coder here, we ran this in the simulations about over 1 million times, really broke it down all week. A lot of nuts and bolts here to come up with tails.
Yes.
Be tails for me.
Okay, it's a joke about the simulations, right?
100% a joke.
Because it would be so funny if you were like, yeah, the simulations, 10,000.
I did my own simulations in my room. I just flipped a coin just over and over. And
35.
kept going tails. It kept going tails.
I flipped a coin on Katie Mox's podcast and it landed tails. And I was like, oh boy.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Danny.
There you have it.
Yeah.
That's just the perfect way to end the show. All right. So just to recap before we get out of here, Proppy, you like the 49ers or the Chiefs to win?
I like the Chiefs. Not a tremendous amount of conviction from me. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think the 49ers roster, top to bottom, is absolutely stacked, absolutely loaded. I have a smidgen of additional confidence when we're looking at Andy Reid compared to Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan's a phenomenal coach. Don't get me wrong. And then I think the quarterback, obviously Patrick Mahomes, in comparison to Brock Purdy, I give the edge there. So I'm going to lean Chiefs. I think it'll be a great game. Wouldn't surprise me if 49ers won, but yeah, I like the Chiefs a little bit more.
Kenzie, you have breaking news, it looks like.
I have breaking news from my dad. He says no Taylor shots during the national anthem. Did that already happen?
It might have.
Yeah, I think it also, I didn't have this available to bet anywhere, but I think the over 90.5 seconds on the anthem just hit as well. Shout out to Reba McEntire.
Wow, good for Reba. All right. And Danny, you're on San Francisco. I remember that. And Kenzie, just last thing here. Who are you on the side? And not that you have an official play on this necessarily. I can't remember if you do. And what's the color of the Gatorade?
All right. Side, this is just personal feeling. I just really don't want to watch the Chiefs win another Super Bowl as an Eagles fan. It just hurts my head to think about the media coverage of them the next 2 weeks. Makes my head hurt. So I am rooting for the Niners and Brock Purdy here. I do think it will be a close game. Again, like Proppy said, I mean, they're just objectively better, more talented roster. So hopefully that will be able to be enough tonight. As far as Gatorade color here, I did think about this a lot. First, I thought red because the whole Taylor Swift thing, both teams are red, and the song, it would all make so much sense. But then I'm like, who drinks red Gatorade? Like, there's no way those players were looking to have red Gatorade on the field. So I don't know. Then I was thinking orange, but I think I'm going to go with the yellow green. We haven't seen it in a little bit. I think it's time for it to come back up there. Solid drink. I think that's a popular one that people actually like when they're doing athletic activity.
Darn it. Now I have to ask Danny, well, what color is the Gatorade?
Ken said it. Who drinks red Gatorade? Who drinks Gatorade? It's 2024, guys. H2O, as Adam Sandler and the Water Boy told us. They're dumping water on the winning coach's head, guys. We know too much about science and nutrition to drink that sugary stuff. Give me water. I had plus 2,000. See, it's all the way down to like plus 400, plus 250 even on some books. You like the line move?
That's a pretty good take, by the way. Wow. SportsLine says Arctic Frost is the GOAT. That's incorrect. It's Riptide Rush, my friends. Alex, Proppy, what color is the Gatorade?
I'm with my guy, Danny. I think it's going to be some high-quality H2O.
Joey Blaze says degenerates. Indeed. We didn't say we were betting it, but we also didn't say we were not betting it. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a really fun show. EK on the front end. We had so much energy, so many bets, so many stars. Mike McClure, RJ White, Maestro, Dave Richard. This crew right here. Really exciting. I'm really looking forward to watching this game, of course. I'm really looking forward to the early edge tomorrow at 10 a.m. Inside the Lines. Are you guys having an Inside the Line show tomorrow at 1, Kenzie?
Yes, we are. We're here all week, going through the week. We're going to have some interesting shows, some futures. We're going to talk a little bit of baseball. We're going to talk a little bit of March Madness, but a lot of new things and exciting things to come from the crew.
I have a request, and I don't know, like I'm kind of speaking out of turn here. Is it possible, because I think we just had the NHL All-Star break. Is it possible to maybe examine some futures for Stanley Cup champion, just so that maybe some of us who aren't really super into NHL could at least have a vested interest in a couple of maybe long shot outrights and shorter shot outrights? Can we do something like that on Inside the Lines?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely going to start getting creative with the future shows coming up. But NHL is completely part of the SportsLine model. We run sims for that every day. So definitely can get some answers there.
I absolutely love that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is a good way to finish. We'll be with you on the regular schedule tomorrow. I guess this is the last show of the NFL season, but we've got NFL content throughout the season. We're gonna be talking NFL draft coming up. There's a lot to talk about. There's already bets out there on, like, for example, first quarterback to be drafted and things of that nature. So the NFL doesn't necessarily go away, but it certainly takes a short nap after this game. And then we get started with MLB. We get started with NBA, NHL, college basketball, March Madness, of course. There's so much to break down, and we'll start it post-NFL season tomorrow at 10 a.m. But for the here and now, thank you for joining us. On behalf of everybody that was on this show that I just mentioned, including the co-host of this show, Erik Kuselias. He's awesome always. You can catch him on CBS Sports HQ. But on behalf of, at least for the last 45 minutes, on behalf of Kenzie Brooks, on behalf of Danny Brasco, on behalf of Propstarz, and Jake the Snake on the 1s and 2s and 9s and 10s, controlling this whole thing for over 90 minutes. This guy is an absolute machine. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for asking your questions. Thanks for hitting the like button. We'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. on The Early Edge. Have fun watching the Super Bowl. Let's cash some tickets. My name is Sia Nejad. This is The Early Edge, and we rest our case.